All right, so now that you guys are all caught up with what's going on with GPE, it is time to get back to turning the wheels into a time attack car. In episode 1 of the Road to Time Attack series, we talked a bit about some changes that were coming to the car, but we didn't really discuss what those are going to be. We're going to have some performance upgrades coming, which we'll get to in a future video in the series, but this one is going to focus on all the safety upgrades that need to happen. Safety just in general is neglected oftentimes in grassroots motorsports, and I'm guilty of it too. It's not as fun doing safety upgrades as it is performance upgrades, but this stuff is dangerous. There's no two ways around it. I've always used the excuse that we're mostly doing autocross stuff, so it's not a big deal. But now that we're primarily doing road course from here on out, there's really no excuse. It doesn't matter if you're in a pro race car at a pro race, or if you're in your factory car doing a casual HPDE day. You hit a wall at 100, you hit a wall at 100. There's a lot of energy to disperse and things are going to go wrong. And so with the current spec of the car and some of the performance upgrades, it's going to be very fast, and this car is a handful to drive, so it's important to stay on top of the safety. And so anything that was questionable or we were unsure of, we're going through and addressing before this thing gets on a road course in its latest form. So with that being said, we have the entire interior ripped out of the thing right now and some nice big holes in the floor. Perhaps the biggest thing I wanted to address was finally putting a proper cage in this. We've had the roll bar that was done back when I was in high school, and it served its purpose, which was mostly just like an aesthetic thing and giving us a place to mount a harness to, but it was never something I was going to trust my life to in a rollover. And so before we actually roll this thing out in full time attack spec, we need to get an entire cage done. So we have our spots cut out for the landing points. We don't actually have a pre-made kit we're going to use. I've looked extensively through all the ones that were on the market, and truth be told, I wasn't impressed by what I saw. It was either poor fitment, or most of them just actually weren't up to snuff with being in compliance with the rules that we're building to. We're building this cage to the NASA wheel-to-wheel roll cage rules, which are pretty much the most stringent out there. If we build a cage to that, then it'll pass tech and be compliant with pretty much any series we want to run in. So we'd rather build to the highest level and then have a cage we know is going to work everywhere, versus building a borderline cage that is a little simpler that might prevent us from doing certain events because it's not going to pass tech. So we're going to go through and do a full 3D scan of the interior. And then once we have that, I'm going to build a CAD model out, and then I'll just design the cage in CAD, and then we'll send it out, and we'll have some of the tubes CNC bent. Fortunately, we don't have a CNC mandrel bender in house yet, and with the size of the cage tubing, which is probably going to be 1 3/4 by 120 wall, if I remember correctly from reading the NASA rules. Side note, NASA dictates cage diameter or bar diameter and wall thickness based off weight of the car, in case you're curious. But trying to bend a tube that thick is a nightmare on a bender, and trying to get some of the compound bends and stuff just makes more sense to have it done with CNC bender. So with the cage, we're trying to get it to a point where we're maximizing every inch of fitment. Obviously, I'm very tall. I've always had problems fitting in this car, but it's also, you want to have some movement in the car as far as room to turn your hands, a little room for your elbows, things like that. And with all the bars we're adding in, which, you guys will see later in the video once we actually design the cage, you want to try and get it as outboard as possible. Obviously, you want to have adequate protection for the driver, but you don't want the bar right on your elbow, which was, something I dealt with even the pre-made kit that used to be in this car. Is if you turn the wheel just wrong, you smash your elbow into the cage, which obviously you don't want for comfort, but also in a crash. You don't want some of those bars so close to you. In the back side of the car here, we have a couple more landing spots. We just have rough, kind of probe holes done where we know the ballpark of where the tubes are going to land, and then we'll adjust those cuts as needed. So we're going to have the two here. This will be where the main hoop lands, is in this area. And then we'll have our down bars that come and follow the A-pillar and come down, and then 2 in the trunk back there. We know that's where the tubes are going to land, and then I just have to go through and actually design the bars from there. Another thing we're probably going to be adding to the car while we're in here is the fire suppression system. We've always run a fire extinguisher that's within reach of the driver, which is rules compliant, but I think at this point we're probably just going to add in the full suppression system. If we don't do it right now, we're going to do it within the next couple months. For those of you who don't know, fire suppression system, you usually have a 5 or 10 pound bottle mounted somewhere, and then you run hard lines to nozzles all across the car. And that's mostly for driver safety. Sometimes it'll save the car in a fire, but that's a secondary purpose. The main reason is to allow the driver to get out when the car is on fire and kind of buy that time. Um, so we'll see. I mean, the whole interior is out right now, so it makes the most sense, but it's a time and budget thing right now, but it's also not that much money, and it's, you never want to skimp on safety. Another thing, safety-wise, that we're going to be doing while we're in here, which kind of goes hand in hand with the cage and everything we're doing, is new harnesses. So this is one of the harnesses. It's a Sawbelt Silver Series. It's a 6-point, and then it has 2-inch belts, which work with the Hans device. You have to be mindful when you're buying harnesses and you're using a Hans that certain size belts are not compatible with certain Hans devices. So it's something you want to check. We'd run a super simple race quip 4-point. Again, okay for autocross, not suitable for road course use. I mean, at this point, they're several years expired, so it didn't even matter. We're going to have to put harnesses in the car. And so doing that, it made sense just to go to ones that we know are going to be exactly what we need. Also changed the driver's seat out. For those of you with a keen eye, we actually had this in the car for the Spring Shakedown 3.0. This is a Recaro, I believe it's a Pro-Fi SPG XL. I think it's a mouthful. And the big thing with this is just having a head restraint. The old Sparco that we were running, which is now the passenger seat in this car, was just a fixed back fiberglass seat. And what this does is it just helps contain side-to-side movement of your head. Obviously, when you're strapped in with a harness and a Hans, you're constrained in the forward direction. And the bolstering keeps your body held side to side, but this helps keep your head from moving too much. Because if you get in a bad crash, there's been instances of people, hitting their head on the side tube on the cage or hitting the roof, things like that. So, it's important to be mindful of that. There's been instances of even with people having padding on the cage, you crash and then get knocked unconscious. So obviously don't want that to happen. But yeah, that's I think kind of the holistic summary of all the safety changes we're making. Not the coolest or the flashiest upgrades, but it's all very, very important. It's a necessity when you're doing this stuff. You don't want to play games with something that makes 700 horsepower and as a little teaser, is very soon going to be making some good downforce. You don't want to take chances, because it's fine until it isn't. And safety items are one of those things where you find out you don't have enough when you need it most, and we don't want to end up in that position. So just taking the time now to make sure everything's squared away, and every time we jump in this car, we're confident that it's going to perform well, but it's also going to be safe in doing so. So I'm going to start scanning the interior, and I'll touch base with you guys either while I'm scanning or working on the CAD model of the cage. All right, so in my office now, we're in our CAD program. I have the rough model of the cage done, or at least the first pass. Got our 3D scan that I did of the car. So you can see, scan the interior. It looks like we scanned the outer shell, but we didn't. It's just the back side of everything we did scan. So we got the full interior and then also into the trunk. So you can see just landing the tubes and the rough cutouts that we had. So for example, this one is the rear shock tower. Obviously the nodes aren't shown the best right now. Those are just kind of generic representations, and then we'll actually do the final fit up once it's in the car. But this kind of gives you a good idea of the design process for something like this. With the vintage cars, it's tough because there's no pre-made kits for things like this. With modern cars, you can literally go off the shelf and get a time attack spec cage or a drift spec cage or whatever you're looking for the more popular modern platforms. But for the vintage stuff, it just doesn't exist. So ultimately, we have to design it ourselves. Behind the scan here, so you can see the actual rough outline of the cage. There's a few bars that we're going to have to add in, but this kind of gives you guys a rough idea of what we're doing. As I said earlier in the video, we're building this to the NASA wheel-to-wheel spec, so a lot of the cage landing locations and number of bends and where tubes are based off of what they require. And we have most of the optional bars. They have bars that you're allowed to run that aren't necessarily mandatory, but we're going to add those in there anyways. So you see the main hoop. We're doing the X style door bars. So these and NASCAR bars are the two most popular. I believe NASCAR gives you a little better clearance, but don't necessarily need that because you have to usually end up carving out the doors to do it. So just for our particular application and what we're doing with the car and where we don't want to cut, the X bar makes a little more sense. We got the down bars coming down here. So this will follow the roof line and then come down the A-pillar. So these are probably the trickiest ones to bend, and we're not bending them in-house. So, on a CNC bender, it's not nearly as bad, but as a compound bend, so it comes down and it's bending in a few different directions to follow the contour as tightly as possible. Now we have a crossbar up here. We're going to have another bar that goes across the center of the roof here. that is diagonal. So it'll go from like the passenger side of the main hoop up to this front corner. And that's just adding rigidity to help prevent the cage from collapsing in certain directions. So like a lot of people build roll cages that are extremely stiff in certain directions. And then over time, people have found that in certain crashes or when cages are loaded certain ways, they want to crumble. So you might have a cage that's really strong in most directions, but you hit it just the right way and it'll tweak and collapse. And so that's why you'll see some of these bars that you've seen on more modern cages, but don't see on older ones because, designs are always evolving and people are finding, safer and better ways to do things and better places to add bars that ensure that this is as strong in as many directions as possible. We have a crossbar here that goes under the dash. That was just tossed in as like a generic representation. In reality, that's probably going to sit a little higher. Then we also have these support bars here that go from the bottom side of the cage here in the corner. Same thing, kind of a weird node, but that's not actually how that's going to look in real life. So we have this tube that goes up. It's currently shown as going halfway up this crossbar. In reality, it's probably going to just come fully up to the node. That was something that once I had that in there, I actually wanted to change how I did it. So yeah, this is the rough outline of the cage. I was hopefully give you guys a little insight as to going from the scan of the car and then reading the rule book simultaneously and then designing a cage and then getting it in the car. And this is what it looks like. It looks like it's protruding through here, but in reality, that's just a sag in the headliner that it's not actually going to be a problem. It might push the headliner a little bit up towards the roof skin, but we need every inch we can get with this stuff. So we're really pushing for as tight a fitment as possible. So with this done, I'm going to send some of these files off and get them bent, and then we'll probably touch base with you guys when we're actually starting to install this. All right, so got the car a little more stripped down than what you guys saw in the last clip. Was trying to avoid taking it off the frame, but in the end, there was no two ways around it to properly. We just had to lift the body up in some capacity. So I got the whole front clip off the car and then took the doors off for better access on the sides. In the car itself, you can see we have some of the main tubes in place. So we got the down bars that run along the roof and then come down. We have the main hoop in, and also we have a diagonal crossbar. That's one of the bars that wasn't in the CAD model because that was one of those things where we just wanted to actually mock it up and do it in the real world versus trying to do it digitally because we want to get it nice and tight on the roof. But this is the start of the cage. So we have the landing plates done. I want to get the main structure done. The body's down on the frame right now, but we've been lifting it and dropping it as needed to get tubes in and out and fit it up. And then once everything's finished welded, we'll have to pivot the body up. So what we've been doing is the front body mounts are technically still bolted, but the bolts are basically backed all the way out. And then all the other body mounts are taken off. You can also see that we got the fuel cell ripped out in the back here. So basically we just pivot the body up, so we kind of lift it up to get access to everything, so we don't have to fully lift the body off, just because up in the front with the engine where the harness comes through for like pretty much everything, so the main power harness and like stuff for the haul tech comes through the center of the firewall and goes some of it through the intake of the engine, just keep it nice and clean and hidden. And we don't have enough length in that harness to fully lift the body straight up, and we didn't want to go through basically unwiring the entire car when it's a nice sealed harness. So this is a good middle ground that lets us take the body off to get the access, but we don't have to start chopping up a wire harness that's already nicely installed and function. So don't want to take any chances there. Now for the cage itself, we're as tight to the roof line as we possibly can be on the sides. You'll notice there's a little bit of space here on the A-pillar, which is really just a structural thing. Like with where the cage lands on the frame, we're as far off on the frame rail as we can be while still having room for a plate and having nice room for weld bead and not hanging it off the side of the frame. So that means that it's a little off the A-pillar. I mean, this is one of those things where we don't really need clearance in that area. You see like a lot of people in like, say, Cars for Optimal Ultimate Street Car where you want to really tuck and hide the cage in. You're trying to maximize every inch everywhere. But for what we're doing, we're more concerned about focusing on load paths. Like obviously we want good clearance around the driver area like I talked about earlier in the video because I need to be able to fit in the car. But for something like this, we would rather lose a couple inches and then just know our force path is good and the cage is going to be nice and structural versus compromising that or adding weird bends and kinks in it just to free up some interior space. So the main section's done. I think the next thing we need to start working on is some of the down bars. So In the CAD model, I think it showed from going from the main hoop right to the shock tower. In reality, we're probably actually going to come further back. So we're going to land those down bar tubes basically as far back as we can without going through the top of the package tray. So we should, based off the scan data and the CAD model, actually be able to come pretty far back here. And what's nice about that is that's going to buy some rigidity at the back of the frame. So when we hang a big carbon fiber dual element wing off the back of this thing to make some downforce, the rear of the car is braced. We actually also mount the wing off of that. So I haven't read anything in the rule book that explicitly says we can't do that. So we're going to incorporate it and run it until someone says otherwise. But I've noticed on some tube chassis cars that people build from scratch, they do that, and that's a good way to get some rigidity. But it does also help the down bars function better. If you think about it, the purpose of those rear down bars is to help prevent the main hoop from folding back in a crash. And so if you run it at a super shallow angle, like basically straight down, it's not doing much. So the more that you can actually get that angle upwards, the better. Like I think in NASA, they say that you need to have at least a 30-degree angle between the up and down of the main hoop and then the angle of the downward bars. You can see here from the passenger side. And then another thing to take note of is the actual bar across the top of the hoop. There's a few ways to do this. A lot of cages just leave that open as a square, which really isn't good. You need something in there to help brace. Really the best practice for that is to do an X bar. So basically do the bar that we did and then do the same thing mirrored. But the problem with that is up in the corner over there, with the way the angle is on the bars to follow the contour of the roof, I won't fit at all, even if I were to sit on the floor with a helmet on. So this is another way to do it. It's much better than not having anything up there. It's still not as ideal as the X brace, but there is that compromise ultimately of I'm a tall person, I need to fit in this car, so we have to compromise somewhere. It's still safe, it's still structurally sound, just not theoretically as good as it could be. So we're going to keep going. I think really all the complicated tube notching and fit ups done. The worst was the that crossbar, just trying to get it met up with the nodes and the joints and trying to keep it as tight as possible to the roof. You can see in here it angles up and then slopes, and just trying to get that notch, especially this joint right up here, was just a total pain, but finally done. We're doing this at the worst possible time. We got a massive heat wave here in Connecticut. It was like 105 degrees out today, so we're roasting, but it is what it is. We got to get this thing together and start getting it out to some time attack events. I'm not going to say what events we're doing yet. As we get a little closer and once we're almost to the point of testing the car, then we'll start talking about what events we're actually going to make to the car, but they are coming up quick, so we got to get a move on with this stuff. But I'm going to get back to doing some more tube fit up, and then I'll touch base with you guys when we made a little more progress. All right, so we are back on the roll cage party. We took a couple week hiatus just because we had some other big projects we had to work on for the business, but as you can see now, we are most of the way there. I'd say we're about 90% of the way done. Last you guys saw, I had some of the tubes in there, like the main structure was done, but at this point, all the tubes are in. Obviously, the most notable ones are we got the door bars in here. We opted to do the X bars instead of a NASCAR style. Like the NASCAR style is basically two parallel tubes that come out over and back, and then there's vertical support tubes going across them. Those give you a little more room in the cockpit, but you also usually have to carve out the door, which we didn't want to do. We ended up with a good bit of space in the interior in doing this, so it was easy enough to do. I opted just to go this route. The floor has a couple new holes drilled in it for the seat to mount to, and that was really the biggest hurdle and the biggest thing that we had to fight with was getting the seating position dialed in, which kind of, I guess, technically has to do with the roll cage, but not necessarily directly. And that's just because, like, I'm super tall, and I already don't fit well in the car, and we need to keep the slider on the seat because there's tons of different drivers that get in this thing of different heights, and so it's not really feasible to only set it up for me or only set it up for the other drivers. So we tried tons of different things. I tried bolting in the seat as we had it originally, just on like the exact setup. So the bracket adapter, then the slider, and then the seat. And that wouldn't even go in. You can see the bar up here, the roof bar, the side of the seat would hit that. So it actually wouldn't even bolt in the car. And then we played around with a bunch of different combinations. And so what we ended up doing was actually drilling a new set of holes. So it's still using the structural cross members that like the factory seat mounts do, but we're taking the slider and going right to the floor, and then we machined little spacers that go in there to help the seat sit level. And that ended up being a good compromise where I actually clear in the car, so I'm shorter than the roll bar is finally. And also my helmet is 2 inches off any of the tubes. We had to actually set the seat a little in towards the center of the car, so I could get good helmet clearance again on that same roof tube here. Just because per the rules, you need 2-inch clearance to any tube, and any tube that you're reasonably close to, you have to put foam on. So with the seat in the factory position, I was like a 1/2 inch away. So that was never going to fly for a tech inspection. But that's all sorted. So I'm glad that was out of the way. That took us like a week to figure out. It was just one of those super frustrating things where it was like everything we tried seemed to not work. And then finally it clicked, and it was like a huge weight off my shoulders. Another thing that looks different from last time is the top parts of the cage are painted. Nothing super crazy. We use, I think it's Seymour paints. They have a pretty cool paint that has like stainless flake in it. So it's very durable, and it's also, if you ever need to weld on it, it's actually weldable, so you don't even have to strip it off. But I hopefully don't have any need to weld on this anytime soon, but if we need to at some point, the option's there. That was really just playing a balancing game of accessibility, because like the more tubes we add in, so like the door bars and then the down bars in the back, the less we can actually pivot the body, because like we're starting to add more points of contact. So we just wanted to get the top section painted, it's like the crossbar, the top of the down bars, the diagonal bar, top of the main hoop, just because we knew once those other tubes went in, we're not going to be able to lift the body up high enough to actually access those anymore. So got that done. Probably won't paint the rest of the tubes until like the floor pieces in and we're basically done with everything else. Head to the back of the car, you can see where the down bars are coming through. Is basically landing where we had talked about. So those just run from the main hoop down here. We have the landing boxes that we made for them. And then we'll have the wing mounts. We'll fabricate mounts that'll come off this, but we'll cover that in the separate aero video. So yeah, slowly coming along. You know, as I've said before, I absolutely hate metalwork, and it's like with doing something like this, it's like not only does the fit up have to be good because we're TIG welding everything, but it's like it's a cage we're gonna have to live with for the foreseeable future. So it's like trying to be mindful about being rules compliant, but also having a good fit up in the car so that I can be comfortable in there, make sure the ergonomics are still good while keeping the cage safe and sound. But yeah, this has been just very time consuming, and between the heat and everything, it's just been absolutely brutal. But fortunately, this is the most intensive change of everything we're doing for the car for the time attack stuff. So, you know, I think even though the car is still completely ripped down right now, I think we're only a couple weeks away from having this thing back on a road course. Once this is wrapped up, which should be done in the next couple of days, we'll be in good shape to knock out the rest of the changes very quickly. So I'm going to get back to work, and then I'll check in with you guys once either we have the floor pieces back in, which is the next step, or maybe once the cage is painted and we're pretty much done. All right, well, finally, after months of crawling in and out of this thing and a million tube fit ups, the roll cage is finally all done. You can see the final product here. So got it all painted. We used the Seymour paints. I think it's like stainless steel embedded paint. Looks pretty good. We'll see how durable it is over time. The floor, we just painted the sections we cut out for rust protection. We'll probably go in and do like a final coat across everything since the floor is pretty beat up at this point. Got the dash in, but we still got, you know, a million puzzle pieces that still need to fall back into place. I think we're going to be able to put most all of the full interior back in, so door panels, window cranks, door handles. Still not sure what we're going to do for the rear seat yet. Probably make some kind of block off panel, but we'll see. It's a battle left to fight another day. The rear, got the down bars all squared away. Need to strip the paint off there, or we already started stripping. Now we got to strip it on the other side, so we start welding on the wing mounts. But getting there piece by piece. Obviously, the safety upgrades aren't the coolest thing in the world. It's not as flashy as doing other performance upgrades, but with what we're doing with the car, it's absolutely necessary. You know, you want to be prepared in case something goes wrong. And it's something we've been wanting to do for a while. So now I fit better in the car, and more importantly, the car is a lot more safe from a structural standpoint. The fire suppression system we wanted to run is currently on back order, so we're probably just going to run the first few events with an onboard fire extinguisher, and then we'll go in and add the system in. Not ideal to have to take the carpet and stuff back out to run the lines, but I mean, it is what it is at this point. We're a month away from the biggest event we're going to be doing with the car all year, and we really just need to get on track and start testing. So I'm going to quit talking. We're going to get started on the aero package, which we'll cover in the next video, and I'll see you guys in that one.